As we're heading into the last few days of 2022, now is the perfect time to stop and reflect and do a year in review. So, in today's video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to do a year in review, and I'm going to be sharing my own year in review with you. Hi, I'm Scarlett Cochran, and this is One Big Happy Life, where we help you find balance, build wealth, and live happy. Everything that you need to create the life that you want. Right now, we're all in a transition period where we're saying goodbye to the previous year and saying hello to the new year. And it can be really exciting to just jump right into all of the resolutions and goal setting and planning of the new year. But before you do, it's really important to take the time to reflect on the year that you're saying goodbye to. So today I'm going to be walking you through a process for reviewing your year, and I'm also going to be sharing some of my own reflections from this past year. And to make it really easy for you to do your own year in review, I've created a free workbook that you can download over at onebighappylife.com/review. Now, before we dive into the how of your yearly review, I want to talk a little bit about why it's so important to do a year in review. We all want to live happy lives, and the key to creating that life is to purposefully design a life that's fulfilling and meaningful to you. And the way that you discover what that life looks like for you is by asking yourself the right questions and making sure that you're answering those questions as honestly as possible. Because that honesty and self-reflection is really the only way to discover what matters truly to you. And as you answer those questions and get clarity around what a good and meaningful life looks like to you, you have to also make it a priority to show up in your life in that way and live your life that way, which is something that takes practice, it takes effort, it takes trial and error, because it likely will require you to shift some of the default ways that you've been showing up in your life. Like, very few of us on default just manage to live our lives fully in alignment with the things that we want to have. Just a really simple example that I think so many of us are guilty of. None of us like waking up tired in the morning, right? We all value waking up in the morning feeling alert, ready to do our best work, ready to be creative, ready to show up as our best selves in our relationships. And yet, many of us also will stay up late at night watching television. I'm guilty of this too. I do it all the time, and not getting enough sleep and then waking up groggy the next morning. So that's just a really simple example of how our default habits don't always align with the results that we want to have in our life and the way that we want our lives to look and feel. And so taking the time to reflect on not only what we truly want in our lives, because that can change over time, but also how we're showing up in our lives and the results that we're getting in our lives, that gives us the feedback that we need in order to decide how we want to act in the future. So by taking the time to reflect on what we want, but also the results that we're creating in our lives right now by the actions that we're taking, that allows us to take more purposeful action in our lives to move our lives closer to the vision that we have for our lives, right? The happier, more fulfilling, more meaningful life that we all want. Reviewing your year also gives you a chance to stop and just be present in your life, meaning taking the time to savor the recent memories that you've made over the course of the last year. It can be really easy to always be future focused and to just always focus on what's coming next and to really not spend enough time savoring the accomplishments that you've achieved over the past year, savoring the memories that you've made, both big and small, and really just enjoying the life that you've created. So I love a year in review because it does allow us to sit down and take a moment and say, hey, I really enjoyed this year. These are some of my favorite parts of the year, and not just let the memories kind of flit through our brains, but taking the time to write them down and actually keep your years in review. Because I think we all have this idea that these memories that feel really strong to us right now, that we're going to hold on to them and they're going to feel just as strong to us for the rest of our lives. But if we look back, think back to 10 years ago, what were some of your best moments of a year, like 5 or 10 best moments 10 years ago, the year 2012, chances are you're not going to really be able to think about more than a handful of moments because things faded compared to if you reflect on it close to the time when those memories happened, then you're really able to recall, you write it down, and then you have now a recollection that you can refer back to many years in the future. So 20 years from now, you'll be able to look back on your 2022 year in review. And for example, one of the things that I have in my year in review is that for Halloween, we dressed up as Thor, Love, and Thunder, a family costume. And it was so much fun and I really enjoyed it. And I have it there in my year in review, but 20 years from now, will I remember that this was the year that we dressed up as Thor, Love, and Thunder? No, unless I look back on my year in review. And when I do, I'm sure it will jog my memory and I'll be able to kind of have a little giggle and revisit the joy that I still have right now very strongly. So again, year in review allows you to be really present in your life versus always being focused on what's coming next. And lastly, the thing that I love about the year in review, because we're going to be looking at both the highlights and also the lowlights, right? Because there's opportunities for us to learn and grow through all of our experiences, is that it really reinforces a sense of agency, meaning our ability to take active steps in our lives to have different results in our life. Right? Because when we look back on the past year, we'll see areas where we made deliberate choices that either helped us get closer to the ideal version of our lives, helped us become happier. And we're also going to see the decisions that we made that maybe aren't in alignment, that we want to make different choices going forward. And the point there is not to beat yourself up over what has happened or to get bogged down by regret or wishing that things had gone differently, but instead to recognize that you have the ability to choose differently going forward. And I think that that is something that we can very easily forget when we're not paying attention to our past and the decisions that we made and reflecting on those decisions, the results that we got, and thinking about how we could have chosen differently even in that moment. And what that does is allow us to choose differently in the future, so then we get better results. So those are some of the very important reasons why a year in review should be part of your annual life practice. So something that you do every single year. All right, so now I'm going to walk you through my process for doing a year in review. So the first thing that I do when I'm doing a year in review is I go through each month individually and I look for the standout moments. So the highs, the lows, things that I was grateful for, things that I accomplished in that month, fun things and experiences that I did that month, even weird little quirky things that happened in that month that may be a really small moment in the grand scheme of things, but stand out to me as something that's really fun and unique and that I want to remember for the rest of my life. So I'm going to share some of my own highs, lows, quirky moments, accomplishments in 2022. So in February 2022, this was a low. So when we started 2022, we were 8 months into the process of building a custom home. We had just finalized the design, it had gone to engineering, and we had made our exterior selections, and we were also in the process of selecting appliances and doing all of those appointments when our builder just decided randomly that he wasn't going to build our house. And unfortunately, the contract allowed him to back out of the contract without any repercussions. And so, of course, we were devastated, and that was a massive low. So that went in my February. But February also had a major accomplishment, which was that I sent in the first draft of my book manuscript to the publisher. And that was something that a project really that I had been working on at that point for 2 years, because it took a year of working on the book to get the book deal. And then it was a year of working on the book in order to actually write the book. So that was a major high and a major low all in the same month, which is February of 2022. Another high that I have in my year in review is that in May of 2022, my daughter Alexis graduated from college. And so it was amazing watching her graduate with her bachelor's degree. It was also really personally exciting because one, it meant that I was done paying for college tuition. And two, it also meant that I had succeeded in accomplishing a dream that I had set for myself 20 plus years before, to be in a financial position where I could pay for college for my daughter. And so that was just a really exciting personal accomplishment. And then also a really proud moment for me as a parent, proud of my daughter's accomplishment. Now, a couple fond experiences. So in July, we went to Texas to see family for the first time since before the pandemic, which was really exciting because Reeves got to see his great grandmother, Grammy, who he hadn't seen since he was much younger. So it was just really exciting that they were able to see each other and spend time together. And we also did something that I've been wanting to do, which was visit a Maria Tosh location and get these ear piercings. And so we did that as a family. So Joseph got his conch pierced. Alexis, unfortunately, got sick, so she wasn't able to go with us on the trip. Reeves got his ears pierced, and then I got these two piercings here. And it was also meaningful to me because one of the things that I said that I was going to do to commemorate getting my book deal was to buy myself some diamond earrings, which is something I've waited a long time to do. And so I got these from Maria Tosh and I wear them every day. And they remind me of both the book deal and also this amazing family vacation that we had and the amazing family experience that we had all getting piercings together. And we did get Alexis a new earring for her nose so that even though she wasn't able to join us physically, she was there with us in spirit. And those are just a few examples of moments that happened in 2022. And my year in review is filled. Every single month, I looked for the highs, the lows, the big moments, the little moments, and I filled it all in. And I really enjoyed reflecting on everything that happened in the year. And I really had to stretch to remember some of the things that happened in some of the months, even though it's been, only 12 months since January. So that's why I think this exercise is so worthwhile, just to see how much you've actually accomplished and how full your life has been over the past 12 months. The next step I do is walk through the 7 areas of wealth and evaluate my progress on each of them over the course of the year. Now, in my book, It's Not About the Money, I talk a lot about holistic wealth building, and that financial wealth, which is the only type of wealth that we typically focus on, is actually only one part of the wealth building equation. There are actually 7 types of wealth, financial wealth being one, and then the other 6, which are health, time, experiences, relationships, knowledge, and options. So for each area of wealth, you're going to ask yourself the same 5 questions. So number 1, what were the best investments that you made and why? So what were the best investments of your time? What were the best investments you made into your knowledge? What were the best investments you made into relationships and why? Secondly, what were the worst investments that you made in this area and why? What are some of the worst ways that you invested your money? What are some of the worst ways that you invested your time? And when I say invested, think of it as spent, right? So what are some of the worst ways that you spent when it came to your time? So some of the worst ways you spent your time. I know for me, I identified this earlier on in the year. One of the worst ways that I spend my time, invest my time, is scrolling social media, just mindlessly scrolling social media. So one thing that I've done recently, like over the past 2 months, is I haven't been going on social media at all. And on top of that, I have asked Joseph and Alexis to limit how many TikToks and Instagram reels they show me because they like to look at that stuff for fun. And for me, I don't want to spend my time on that. So that is a way that I know in the past I have over invested my time, and where it's an investment that has not helped me create the life that I want. So it's something that I'm being very conscious of now. And so the final questions are, where did you overinvest and why? And so I just talked about social media. Where did you underinvest and why? So when it comes to time, I know one way that I've underinvested is that I've underinvested in my own health. So I haven't invested nearly enough time in prioritizing my own health. And then lastly, are you happy with the progress that you've made in this area of wealth? So are you happy with the progress that you've made in your financial wealth? Are you happy with the progress that you've made in terms of your own health? Are you happy with the progress that you've made in your relationships? And so again, these worksheets will walk you through every single one of these questions for each of the 7 areas of wealth. So it's the easiest thing to do. Just go to onebighappylife.com/review and just download it. And that way you can just answer the questions. The next part of the year in review is looking back on the goals that you set for yourself in 2022, if you set goals. Whether it's goals, intentions, just a vague thought that you might have had either at the beginning of the year or any part of the year about things that you wanted to shift in your life, I want you to try to identify those things if you didn't write them down at any point during the year. If you did write them down, great, because then you'll just have it and you'll be able to put it right in the sheet. So what was your goal? What happened with that goal? Did you achieve the goal? Did you not achieve the goal? And why? And how do you feel about that goal now? And is that goal still something that matters to you? And the reason why we do this is because if you did set goals, then you want to measure the progress on the goals that you set. But it's also important to evaluate, if you did achieve the goal, do you still care about the goal? Is it something that still matters to you? Because we change and evolve over time. So the goals that may have driven us before may be less important to us now, and it's important to recognize that. But also, if you didn't achieve the goal, you still ask yourself the question, does this goal matter or not? And if you didn't achieve it, what went wrong? And this evaluation will help you when it comes to setting new goals and new intentions for the new year, and also coming up with new strategies to maximize your odds of success as you continue to work towards the goal. So now for the final part of the year in review, which is really reflecting and working through a number of questions. And I'm just going to share a couple of them with you here, but of course you can grab all of them inside of the year in review workbook. So reflection question number 1, what are the 5 biggest lessons that you learned this year? And oftentimes the lessons are baked into some of our hardest moments, some of our failures, the things that did not go so well in the year. Those are the areas where we have some of the most potential for growth and learning. So that's why I say, as you're going month by month, make sure you put the highs and the lows. Make sure you put the good parts and the bad parts, not only because the good parts and the bad parts are what actually make up a holistic, well-rounded, happy and fulfilling life. It's the good and the bad, the highs and the lows, but also because there are so many powerful and important lessons that we can learn from the lows. Another question to reflect on is, and I think this is a really unusual question that you don't see that often, is how did you live in alignment with your values this year? Meaning, how did you live your life in a way that felt really true and in alignment with yourself this year, right? How are you even more you this year? And I know that that is a really uncommon question to ask, and it may feel strange the first time that you ask it of yourself, but it's such an important question because I think so often in these year in reviews, we tend to focus on things that are sort of outside of ourselves. So accomplishments and external things like that, and experiences and things that happen to us. But remembering that the life that we're creating is a life that should feel fulfilling to us, a life that is leading us towards self-actualization, where we become the best version of ourselves that we can be. It's really important that we take the time to ask ourselves, and that we also value the question of, are we living in alignment with our values? And so for me, one of the ways that I did that this year is by making the decision that it was okay for me to be less public this year, for me to publish less public work, meaning I wasn't as active on social media as I have been in the past. This is also tied into this kind of taking a break from social media for my own mental health, but also not producing as much public facing work as I have in the past. And that was a challenge for me because I definitely felt this pull, this pressure to always be showing up and always be on and always be publishing new and interesting public facing content. But it was a real refreshing change, right? A real stretch of my character to live my truth, which is that I wanted to take more time for myself and my family. Not only did I want to, but I needed to, especially as we were scrambling to figure out, well, where are we actually going to live once the house fell through? And then also the heavy work of birthing a book. And I just needed more space. And so it was a beautiful thing to push myself to challenge my expectations of what it means to be someone that has this public facing side of the business. Like, could I scale back? Could I not focus on growth in that way, in terms of like always pushing things out, and instead just focus on finishing the book, getting that work out there, and also continuing to coach and serve inside of our programs and services. And that's what I did. And it felt really good, even though in the moment it felt really hard. I definitely felt a whole bunch of conflict the whole time. But now looking back on it, I feel fully grounded in the decisions that I made because I know that they were in alignment with my values. So that's an example of how you can look at this question for yourself. It could be, how did you show up in relationships in a way that aligned with your values? What are some things you said no to? What are some things you said yes to? Just thinking about different ways that you can attack this question. And another reflection question that you'll find in the year in review is, what did I worry / stress about a lot over the course of the year, or at any point during the year, that now looking back on it, I realize actually wasn't that big of a deal? And I've already just given you an example of that for me, which is worrying and stressing the whole time that I was consciously not producing public facing work. I'm like, is this okay? Is this a problem? And what I realize now, again, that it's done, I've done it, everything is fine, is that I worried about it for nothing. And I wish that I had just sat in the decision that this is what I wanted to do and didn't stress about it so much, because I would have enjoyed the process. I did it anyway, right? So I might as well have enjoyed it along the way. So I love this question because it really helps us realize, like really look back on those moments where it's like, wait, I worried for nothing. And that makes it easier in the future to nip those worries in the bud and just stay grounded in, these are my values. I can trust myself. I can figure it out no matter what happens. And so the last question that I'm going to share with you is the final question in the year in review, which is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy am I with the life that I lived this year? And again, it's really important that you are honest with yourself here, because that honesty is what will allow you to make sure that you don't, if it was a year that was less than stellar for whatever reason, that you don't continue to do the same things year after year, because the results that you don't want will continue to compound, and you don't want that. You want the results that you do want bit by bit to compound year over year. That's what's going to create that rich and fulfilling life for you. So I want you to really think about, how did this year go for you and why? And in particular, I want you to make sure that you're focused on the things that are in your control. Right? It's really easy to focus on the external things, like maybe something happened with your job and you didn't get a raise, or of course there was inflation, interest rates went up. Like with me, the builder backed out, so I did not get this house that I had spent 8 months dreaming about, and instead we purchased a different home. And so I want you to think about the things that were in your control. Given the circumstances that happened in your life this year, those things you couldn't control. They happened the only way they could have happened. And we know this to be true because that is the way they happened. So given that those things happen, focus on how you reacted to those things, the choices that you made in light of the circumstances that you found yourself in, right? How happy are you with the choices that you made, how you showed up in your life, and the results that you created in your life, and why? And that is how you do a year in review. So be sure to head on over to onebighappylife.com/review to get your hands on the full year in review workbook. It should take you about an hour or so to go through, and you can break the 4 parts up over the course of a couple of days by doing 15 minutes each day. But I want you to take the time to do this and really take the time to reflect on this past year, because it's the best way to get the most bang for your buck out of this year and to make sure that you are able to course correct and to make sure that you are consciously and purposefully creating your life year over year. All right, I will see you next year. Bye.